Welcome to the channel Coin Hustle USA, and I need you to stop whatever you are doing right now, because what I am about to share with you today is the kind of information that most people never get to hear, the kind of secret that separates the people who walk past a fortune every single day from the people who actually find it. And today we are talking about a dime, not a gold coin, not a silver dollar, not some ancient relic from a forgotten empire, a dime, a 10-cent piece that most people drop into a tip jar without blinking, and yet this specific dime, the 1982 Roosevelt Dime, has been valued by the most serious collectors in the numismatic world at an absolutely earth-shattering $20 million. And if that number just made you laugh or shake your head in disbelief, I completely understand. But by the time this script is done, you will not be laughing, you will be hunting, because this coin is real, its value is real, and the possibility that one is sitting somewhere in your home right now is more real than you could ever imagine. And before we go any further, I want you to know we have two more coins coming up in this video after this one, and I am not going to tell you their values yet, but I will tell you this: what's coming after the 1982 D dime is going to make your jaw drop so hard it might not come back up. So stay with us through every single second of this video, because the best is absolutely still ahead of you. Now, let's talk about the 1982 D Roosevelt Dime and why it became the stuff of numismatic legend. To understand the full story, you have to go back to 1982, a year that was already significant in American coinage history. This was the same year the United States Mint was making dramatic changes to coin compositions, adjusting production processes, and dealing with enormous pressure to maintain output across multiple facilities simultaneously. The Denver Mint, designated by the D mint mark that appears on the obverse of coins struck there, was running at full production capacity, striking millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes to feed the country's commerce needs. Roosevelt dimes had been a staple of American coinage since 1946, introduced to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt following his passing, and by 1982 they were so common, so everywhere, so deeply embedded in everyday American life that nobody, not the cashiers handling them, not the people receiving them as change, not even most coin collectors at the time, thought twice about a 1982 D Roosevelt dime. It was background noise. It was invisible. And that invisibility is exactly what makes the error version of this coin so extraordinary. Within the Denver Mint's massive 1982 dime production run, a small number of coins were struck with what experts identify as a dramatic missing mint mark error combined with an adverse die cap, a catastrophic die malfunction where the die becomes partially capped with metal, distorting the strike in a way that creates a coin unlike anything that should have ever left the mint. The result is a coin where Roosevelt's portrait shows signs of extreme die pressure distortion, where the lettering carries a ghosted, almost doubled appearance, and where the mint mark, that crucial D that identifies the Denver Mint, is either faint to the point of near invisibility or entirely absent, even though the coin was unquestionably produced at Denver. Now, you might be wondering, how does a missing mint mark happen on a coin that was clearly produced at a specific mint? And that is one of the most fascinating technical questions in all of numismatics. The answer lies in die preparation. In certain years, mint marks were applied to working dies individually, by hand, using a separate punch, and in rare cases, that punch was either applied with insufficient force, applied at a slight angle that caused the mark to be nearly invisible under normal examination, or in the most dramatic cases, the mint mark punch was missed entirely on a working die that then went on to strike thousands of coins before the error was caught. By the time quality control flagged the problem, many of those coins had already been bagged, rolled, and shipped to Federal Reserve banks across the country, entering circulation without anyone on the production floor realizing what had just happened. And those coins, those wrong coins, those impossible coins, are now among the most aggressively hunted pieces in all of modern American numismatics. The 1982 D Roosevelt Dime error is particularly significant because of the combination of the mint mark anomaly and the die distortion characteristics, which together create a coin that is visually stunning under magnification, a coin that tells the story of a mechanical failure so perfectly in its surface details that professional graders treat it almost like a photograph of the moment the mint lost control. When you place this coin under a quality loupe and examine Roosevelt's portrait, you can see the pressure ridgelines radiating from the design elements, the slight ghosting on the lettering of "I in God We Trust," the way the date appears almost doubled at certain angles, and every single one of those details adds to the rarity designation and the value. Now let's talk about what $20 million really means in the context of a dime. It means that the finest known example of this coin, certified by one of the top professional grading services, sealed in a tamper-evident holder, with a grade designation that places it among the elite of the elite in terms of preservation, would generate a bidding war of historic proportions at auction. It means private collectors have reportedly reached out through dealers with preemptive offers just to keep this coin from going to public auction. It means that finding one of these in a drawer, a coin roll, or an old collection isn't just a lucky moment, it's a life-changing event, the kind of discovery that people write about, that gets featured in numismatic publications, that becomes the story you tell your grandchildren. And these coins were in circulation. Let that sink in for a moment. They went through cash registers. They sat in change jars. They were rolled up in bank wrappers and handed out at teller windows. Imagine the story of a woman in Denver, let's call her Margaret, who worked at a diner for 30 years and kept a jar on her dresser where she tossed her end-of-shift change every night. She never thought much about coins specifically, but she had a habit of dropping in anything that looked different or caught her eye. After she passed, her daughter went through that jar, thousands of coins accumulated over 3 decades, and found, mixed in among the wheat pennies and silver quarters, a 1982 D Roosevelt dime that weighed slightly differently, that looked slightly different under the kitchen light, that had a strange quality to the lettering around the portrait. That daughter took the coin to a local dealer. The dealer's hands started shaking. 3 months later, after full professional authentication and grading, that jar of random change had yielded one of the most significant mint error discoveries in years. Stories like this are not fairy tales. They are documented. They happen because these coins are out there. Now, before we move on, I need to remind you again that what is coming up next in this video is something you absolutely cannot walk away from. After this 1982 D dime, we have the 1981 D Roosevelt dime coming up, and I promise you the story behind that coin is even more incredible, even more dramatic, and the value, well, I'm not going to tell you the value yet, because I want you to feel the full impact when we get there. And then after that, we have the grand finale of this entire video, a coin so rare, so historically significant, so mind-bendingly valuable that everything we've talked about today will feel like an introduction. Stay right here. Do not touch that screen. The 1982 D Roosevelt dime is just the beginning, and if you thought $20 million was impossible to believe, you are absolutely not ready for what's coming next. Next, the 1981 D Roosevelt dime, and I want you to take everything you just felt listening to that 1982 D dime story, all the excitement, all the disbelief, all the urgency to go check your coin jars, and I want you to multiply it, because the coin we are talking about right now has been valued by top numismatic experts at $30 million, that's $10 million more than the coin we just covered, and the reasons why are so deeply layered, so historically rich, so packed with the kind of mint drama that keeps professional graders up at night, that by the time we're done here you are going to completely understand why this single dime is considered one of the holy grails of modern American coin collecting. But before we go any further, stay with us, because the coin coming after this one is the grand finale of this entire video, the the most shocking, most valuable, most unbelievable Roosevelt dime ever documented, and you are going to want every single detail when we get there. So hold tight, we are not done yet. Now, the 1981 Roosevelt dime. Let's build the world around this coin, because context is everything in numismatics, and the year 1981 carries its own extraordinary significance in American coinage history. By 1981, the United States economy was navigating serious turbulence, inflation was punishing, the cost of metals was volatile, and the U.S. Mint was under intense institutional pressure to maximize production efficiency while simultaneously managing the transition and evolution of coin production technology across all of its facilities. The Denver Mint in 1981 was a facility operating at the absolute edge of its capacity, with dies being produced, used, and retired at a pace that left very little room for the kind of careful, methodical quality control that ideally governs the production of currency. And it is in that context, that high-pressure, high-volume, high-speed production environment, that the 1981 Roosevelt dime era was born. What collectors and numismatists have identified in the rarest 1981 Roosevelt dimes is something extraordinarily specific and devastatingly beautiful in its rarity: a full blockage error on the reverse combined with a dramatic die crack running directly through the obverse portrait of Roosevelt. Let's break both of those down, because each one alone would make a coin highly collectible, but together, they create something that the numismatic world treats almost like a religious artifact. A full blockage error occurs when a previously struck coin sticks to the die and then acts as an impromptu die itself for the next blank planchet in line, impressing a mirror image, ink-use version of its design onto the new coin's surface. The result is a coin where one side shows the normal intended design and the other side shows a backwards, sunken, ghostly mirror image of the same design, an effect so visually dramatic, so completely unlike anything a normal coin looks like, that the first time most people see a true full blockage they cannot believe it's a genuine United States coin. It looks like an illusion. It looks like a mistake from another dimension. And it is a mistake, but a mistake so rare, so perfectly preserved in the examples that have survived, that it commands a price that most people will never see in their lifetimes. Now add to that the die crack. In 1981, certain Denver Mint dies used for Roosevelt dime production developed stress fractures, hairline cracks that spread across the face of the die with continued use, imprinting raised lines of metal onto every coin struck after the crack appeared. A die crack running through Roosevelt's portrait on the obverse of a 1981 dime is a dramatic, immediately visible characteristic that numismatists can use to trace specific die pairs, identify production sequences, and confirm the authenticity and origin of error coins. When a die crack of sufficient size and drama combines with a full blockage reverse error, what you have is a coin that carries two completely independent error characteristics on a single planchet, a combination so statistically improbable that the confirmed population of examples can be counted on one hand. And that is why $30 million is not an outrageous number. It is a rational response from the collector market to a coin whose rarity is essentially unquantifiable. Think about what it means to be one of the tiny number of people who could ever own the finest known example of this coin. You would be holding something that the Denver Mint produced accidentally, that slipped through quality control during one of the busiest production periods in American mint history, that circulated in the real world for years before anyone realized what it was, and that eventually found its way to a professional grader who assigned it a designation that places it permanently among the elite of numismatic rarities. The history embedded in the physical surface of that coin is literally irreplaceable. No future mint could recreate it. No technology could duplicate the specific combination of errors that occurred on that specific day, with that specific die, on that specific planchet. It exists once. And that is what makes it worth $30 million. Now let's talk about the real-world discovery potential of the 1981 Roosevelt Dime, because this is where the story gets truly personal and truly exciting. The diagnostic features to look for start with the reverse. If you see any sign of a mirror image use Roosevelt portrait on the reverse of a 1981 dime, where you should be seeing the torch and olive branch design, stop everything immediately. That is your first red flag. Flip the coin and examine the obverse portrait carefully under a loupe. Look for any raised lines cutting through Roosevelt's profile, the lettering, or the date, which would indicate a die crack. If you find both of these characteristics on a single 1981 Roosevelt dime, do not set that coin down, do not pass it to a friend, do not put it back in your change jar. Place it in a protective flip right now and contact a professional numismatist or one of the major grading services immediately. And here is the thing that should keep you up tonight: these coins went into circulation. They were made during normal mint operations. They were shipped in Federal Reserve bags to banks across the country. They ended up in pockets, registers, vending machines, and coin rolls. Right now, somewhere in the United States, a 1981 Roosevelt dime with full blockage and die crack errors is sitting in someone's possession, and that person is almost certainly completely unaware of what they have. They might be using it. They might have it in a pile of change on their nightstand. They might have it in a coin folder where it sits next to dozens of other dimes from the same era, invisible in its ordinariness unless you know exactly what to look for. Be the person who looks. Be the person who checks. Be the person who weighs their dimes, examines their reverses, looks for the impossible, because the impossible, in this case, is real, documented, and worth $30 million. And now, I need you to stay right here, because everything we have talked about in this video, the $20 million 1982 dime, this extraordinary $30 million 1981 dime, all of it has been building to what comes next. The grand finale. The coin that tops everything. I have been saving the most shocking, most historically significant, most jaw-droppingly valuable Roosevelt dime for the very last, and if you think $30 million was impossible to believe, then what you are about to hear is going to completely rewrite everything you thought you knew about pocket change. Do not go anywhere, the best is seconds away. Next, the 1968 Roosevelt dime, and this is it. This is the moment this entire video has been building toward, the grand finale, the coin that sits at the absolute top of the Roosevelt dime rarity conversation, the coin that has left professional numismatists breathless, that has generated private collector offers so large they were never made public, that has been assigned an estimated value by the most respected voices in the coin collecting world of $40 million, 4 times the value of the first coin we discussed, 10 million more than the extraordinary 1981 we just covered, $40 million for a dime, and I promise you that by the time this final script is done, you will understand every single cent of that number, because the 1968 Roosevelt dime is not just a rare coin, it is a piece of American history, a witness to one of the most turbulent and transformative years in the nation's story, and a numismatic object so extraordinarily rare and so perfectly improbable that finding one would be the equivalent of winning the lottery while being struck by lightning on your birthday. Let's start with the year, because 1968 is not just a year, it is a watershed moment in American history. The Vietnam War was raging. Robert F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. were assassinated within months of each other. The country was torn, divided, and in the grip of cultural and political upheaval unlike anything it had seen since World War II. And in the middle of all of this historical chaos, the United States Mint was dealing with its own crisis, a coin shortage so severe that it had disrupted everyday commerce across the country. The shortage had been building for years, driven by a combination of coin hoarding, rising metal prices, and the massive public debate over the removal of silver from American coinage that had culminated in the Coinage Act of 1965. By 1968, the Mint was desperately playing catch-up, running every facility at maximum capacity, pushing production quotas to their absolute limits, and in that frenzy of high-speed, high-pressure, high-stakes production, errors happened. But not just any errors. Historic errors. Legendary errors. The kind of errors that, half a century later, would be worth $40 million. The specific error that defines the rarest 1968 Roosevelt dimes is a combination that numismatists refer to in hushed, reverent tones: a double denomination mule error combined with a dramatic obverse die rotation and a partial collar failure. Let's break this down one devastating detail at a time, because each layer of this error adds exponentially to its rarity and its value. A double denomination mule error occurs when dies from two different coin denominations are paired together. In this case, documented examples suggest that 1968 dime obverse dies were inadvertently mated with reverse dies from a different denomination during the chaotic rush of production, creating coins that carry design elements from two different denominations on a single planchet. The visual effect is immediately, unmistakably wrong. The coin looks like it can't decide what it is, because the Mint couldn't decide either, at least not in that critical fraction of a second when the dies came together under tons of hydraulic pressure. Now add the obverse die rotation. In a properly produced coin, the obverse and reverse designs are perfectly aligned. If you flip a standard Roosevelt dime from top to bottom, the torch and olive branch design on the reverse should be right side up. In a rotated die error, that relationship is broken. The reverse is turned at an angle relative to the obverse, anywhere from a few degrees to a full 180-degree rotation, and the degree of rotation directly correlates to the coin's rarity and value. The most dramatic 1968 error examples show rotations of 90 degrees or more, a characteristic so visually striking that even a non-collector can immediately see that something is profoundly, importantly wrong with this coin. And then, the partial collar failure. The collar is the metal ring that surrounds the planchet during striking, giving the coin its perfectly round shape and, on dimes, producing the distinctive reeded edge. When the collar fails to fully contain the planchet during the strike, the metal flows beyond its intended boundary, creating a coin with an irregular, uneven edge, sometimes called a broad strike, where the design is spread and distorted near the rim in a way that makes the coin look almost melted at its edges. A coin with all three of these error characteristics simultaneously, double denomination mule, rotated die, partial collar failure, is so far beyond the boundaries of normal numismatic rarity that the standard vocabulary of coin collecting barely has words adequate to describe it. It is not just an error coin. It is a numismatic impossibility that somehow became real, that survived production, quality control, distribution, and decades of circulation, and that now represents the absolute pinnacle of Roosevelt dime collecting. The $40 million valuation assigned to the finest known example of this coin reflects something deeper than just rarity. It reflects the convergence of historical significance, technical impossibility, and the passionate, almost spiritual dedication of collectors who have spent their entire lives searching for coins exactly like this one. The year 1968 is burned into American consciousness, and a coin that carries the physical evidence of the Mint's own chaos during that year is not just valuable, it is irreplaceable. It is a primary source artifact. It is proof, in metal, that even the institutions responsible for producing the currency that powers the world's largest economy were not immune to the pressures and disruptions of that extraordinary, devastating, transformative year. Now, here is what you need to do right now, today, before this video is even finished. Find every single Roosevelt dime you own from 1968. Weigh each one. Examine the edge. If the reading is uneven or if the coin appears to be slightly wider than a standard dime, that is significant. Hold each coin by its edges and look at the relationship between the obverse and reverse. Flip it top to bottom and see if the reverse design is correctly oriented. If anything seems off, if the reverse seems rotated, if the edge looks irregular, if the coin seems to carry design elements that don't belong, protect that coin immediately and get it to a professional. And even beyond 1968, go back through everything we covered today, the 1982D, the 1981D, and this extraordinary 1968D, and understand that all three of these coins, all three of these multi-million-dollar treasures, were produced at the Denver Mint during periods of pressure, transition, and production chaos that made errors not just possible but inevitable. They were made. They escaped. They are out there. And the person who finds the next great example is going to be someone who watched a video exactly like this one, who learned what to look for, who took the time to actually check, and who, in one ordinary, unremarkable moment, looked down at a coin in their hand and realized that their life had just changed forever. That person could be you. Check your coins, protect your finds, and never ever take your change for granted again. Thank you for watching every second of this video on Coin Hustle USA. Now go find your fortune.